But first, I want to do a quick news reaction because I find this article to be a confirmation of something I've been talking about on the show, something that I have been predicting, and now we see experts who are confirming what I've been talking about. So here's the article. This came to me in my interesting at calnewport.com email address. It's from June 16th, so it's a week or two ago. And it's TikTok. An executive from TikTok that is to some degree dunking on Facebook. And I want to get into the details of what they're saying here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see the article. If you're listening, I'll tell you what's on the screen. All right. So they're quoting in this article a executive from TikTok, the president of Global Business Solutions. And he's making a clear distinction between TikTok and Facebook that I have made before. So this executive named Blake Chanley says Facebook is a social platform. They've built all their algorithms based on the social graph. That is their core competency. Ours is not. All right. He goes on to clarify what is TikTok. We are an entertainment platform. The difference is significant. It's a massive difference. Now, this is something I've talked about multiple times before on the show, this idea that TikTok and its popularity actually represents an important transition in the landscape of these attention economy apps. And I actually think it is a positive transition. So it's easy instinctually, if you're a social media skeptic, to look at TikTok and everyone looking at this and the 600 million users and be like, oh man, we're going down the same road. But I actually think it's positive. And this is why, what this executive is saying. TikTok is not playing the same game as Facebook. It is not a social company. Their revenue stream is not based off of monetizing a social graph. It provides entertainment, straight to the brainstem entertainment. If you are bored, if you are trying to escape a moment of existential despair, whatever the circumstance that wants you to get out of your current moment, you pull up TikTok's app. It's these short videos, algorithmically optimized and selected. Boom, 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 one after another. They hit these buttons in your brainstem, slack jaw, drool coming out of the side of your mouth, just locked in, distracted. They are just optimizing distracting entertainment. No attempt to say, here's what your friend is up to. Here's an article that was shared by your cousin. Forget all that, just straight to the brainstem entertainment. What the executive is saying is that Facebook, that's not what they were, but they're trying to do this. This is the premise of this article, is that Facebook is trying to, as I previewed they were, increasingly shift over towards this TikTok model. Let me just put a quote here from the article. Facebook plans to modify its primary feed to look more like TikTok by recommending more content regardless of whether it's shared by friends. And of course, why are they doing this? Is because they are struggling. Here's the numbers from the article. The parent company of Facebook, Meta's stock price is down 52% this year, underperforming the NASDAQ, which only dropped 32%. In April, they said revenue in the second quarter could drop from a year earlier. That'd be the first time that's ever happened. So Facebook is struggling. They see TikTok being successful. Like, let's be more like TikTok. I think, as I've said before, that is the beginning of the end for the social media platform monopolies. The one thing 2010 Facebook, when it was really starting to get humming, the one thing it had going for it was network effects. The people you know are on here. If the primary use of this network is to connect with and see what people you know are up to, you have to come to our network, and no one can compete with us because no one is going to be able to get everyone you know onto their network. That is very hard. Once we've locked in with our first mover advantage, your cousin, your roommate, your brother, your sister, they're all on here. We have this first mover advantage. You have to use our network because that's where the people you know are. As soon as you move out of the game of connecting the people you know, facilitating the sharing of information between people who already know each other. Once you move out of that game and move to the alternative game of brainstem manipulation, pure distraction, maximizing time on screen, we are the thing you want to look at when you're trying to escape the current moment, you lose that advantage. It no longer matters that my cousin, my roommates, my brother, my sister are on your platform. If all I'm doing on that, as it says right here in this article, is seeing content recommended by an algorithm that has nothing to do with what's going on with my friends. So yes, maybe in the short term, it'll help Facebook stave off some of its numbers drops because they'll get more time on screen. But as I've said before, and I want to emphasize again, the biggest conclusion of this shift among these players is that you are now in a competitive pool where you don't have the powerful network effects of people I specifically know need to be on there, and you are competing with anyone else who's trying to provide entertainment and distraction. That is a very competitive pool, and it is a pool in which I think it is going to be impossible for any one company to dominate in the way that, let's say, a Facebook or an Instagram or a Twitter dominated our attention 5-6 years ago. If you are just an app on my phone that can distract me, that app is next to my podcast player. That app is next to YouTube videos. That app is next to video streamers investing billions of dollars in high-end entertainment that can come at me and be unlike anything else that we have, seen before. $200 million episodic series is competing with that. It's competing with video games. It's competing with books and audiobooks. It's competing with other activities you might do in the analog world. That is a much more competitive space. And I think once you're in that pool where all we're offering is distraction entertainment, all we're trying to do is to get eyes on screen, necessarily people's digital interactions are going to fragment and go more niche. There is no reason for there to be a dominant player. TikTok is having a moment, but there's no reason for it to have to be something that everyone uses. Most people don't. It's popular, but there's no big issue if you don't. In a world of just distraction, people are going to fragment or segment towards distractions that they like in particular. You're really into a certain type of sports, well, you're listening to that type of sports radio and podcasts by athletes in that sports. Maybe you're a political conservative and you're over in like the Ben Shapiro ecosystem, which has its own videos and its own shows all about stuff that you're interested in. Maybe you're a board game enthusiast. There's a place for that. Maybe you're a Cal Newport type. You're interested in deep life and getting away from the more distracted living. So we have my videos, my podcast, my books. It necessarily fragments once you no longer have the binding glue of the activity you're doing requires people you know to be here. So I've been saying this article confirms it. Here it is. The head of TikTok saying, well, not the head, but an executive at TikTok saying Facebook is trying to become more like us because they want their views to go up. But good luck. And I think he's right. Good luck. If you try to become an entertainment company, you compete with everyone else. So I see that as positive. I like TikTok, not actually using it, but I like what it's doing. TikTok is causing these other platforms that so had us captured and had such a capture on our culture, is causing them to accidentally knock the legs out of their own proverbial table, to get a short-term gain in exchange for their long-term downfall, which I think is good. Social media universalism, when there was 3 platforms everyone had to use, I think we've seen for now, it was bad for our civic culture. It was bad for our mental health. It was bad for our ability to do anything else. I don't like that moment where we all had to use 3 platforms. Too much control, too much power, too much negative externalities. So this is good. Beginning of the end for that era of monopolies. So we shall see. You know what they said in this article, Jesse? I thought it was a good analogy. They said TikTok was saying Facebook will never succeed at being TikTok because you can't shift core competencies. And the analogy they gave is when Google tried to compete with Facebook. So remember Google Plus?
Vaguely now that you say that.
Yeah, Google spent millions and millions. This was during Facebook's rise. Like, we want to do that. They spent all this money and they had a huge advantage too. Google had a huge advantage if we can just make Google Plus native to all of these Google apps that everyone's already using, Gmail, the calendars, and they did. And it still failed. And the reason why it failed is because Facebook had been built from the ground up to be a social graph company. They just did it really well. Google had not, and they could never get over there. And so in this article, the TikTok executive is saying, good luck. You're going to be the Google Plus of these short videos. We know how to do it. Our whole company's built around it. You don't. It'll never be as good. You're not going to peel people off. But I like the fact that they're going to batter up their ship against the shore here trying to do it because, man, we need to get past this moment of 2 platforms.
Did you listen to Zuckerberg's interviews with your buddy Lex and Tim?
Yes. I listened to the Lex one.
He was on with Tim too.
Yeah. I think whichever one came out first. I listened to the Lex one.
Lex came out first.
It's the problem with doing a tour like this for someone like that. And then I was thinking, I don't know if I need to listen to
It's like a book tour.
Yeah, I don't need to listen to him again on another show. Though I'm sure Tim's interview was good as well. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting.
He'll want to be on your show soon.
See, I am not of this school of thought, this like Zuckerberg. I think I'm with Lex on this. Zuckerberg is not the devil, you know. And I don't like the narratives, though I've been a big opponent of some of these services. It's not because I think they're nefarious, right? I don't think Zuckerberg is the devil. I think it's too simplistic when we have to try to contrive these plot lines of like they're purposefully ignoring all this harm they're doing because they're so evil or this or that. I don't think that's the case. I just think social media universalism, which I can't blame them. I mean, hey, if everyone's using this, we want to grow as big as possible. I just think it was bad for our culture, this moment of universalism where everyone felt like they had to use the platforms. I think that is a problem. I think if you have a platform everyone is using, there's nothing you can do that's going to prevent that from probably having lots of negative externalities. I don't think a lot of those are planned. I mean, I think Facebook, they try to solve these problems. They spend a lot of money on it. Like, we'll do anything you say we should do. It's a losing battle because if you have 600 million daily active users from all sorts of walks of life all over the world, it's like an impossible challenge to make that into some sort of interesting. The only solution to that is segmentation. No problem having small groups of people figuring out how they want to interact, what their standards are, what their norms. That works out fine. 600 million people, it's not natural. Yeah.
Do you think he wants to work for the rest of his life?
I don't know. I mean, don't bet against him long term. All I say is he's one of the only CEOs from that boom, that second internet boom period who's still CEO. But he's young.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be a bit of a killer.
Yeah.
Right? To be running that company at 22, how do you survive that? With the investor pressure to stay in charge? I mean, he's got to be a ruthless guy. That is a hard Game of Thrones style challenge. The Google guys didn't last. The Instagram guys didn't last. The Twitter founders didn't last. Dorsey was out of there. It's very difficult to run a company, start a company in your young 20s, have it become a $500 billion company and still be the CEO. That means you're cracking skulls and stabbing people in the ribs as they're like in the back room of the castle throne room. Like, that's not just you're a nice guy working hard. I think you have there's some sort of business instinct there. That's very difficult to do. Steve Jobs got kicked out. No one makes it. Gates is the only other person I can think of. Bill Gates is the only person I can think, well, maybe Larry Ellison. There's other examples, but Gates is who comes to mind. Gates started Microsoft as a kid. And almost identical situation to Zuckerberg. Dropping out of Harvard after his sophomore year. It's like exactly the same as Zuckerberg. And he held on to that company until he was ready to leave, 30 years later. So like Gates and Zuckerberg is Gatesian.
Amazon.
Yeah, Bezos was older when he was youngish, but he was at D.E. Shaw sort of analyzing the industry and was trying to figure out how do we make a play for e-commerce and the internet. And he had no connection to books other than so D.E. Shaw is this kind of weird, cool, quantitative investment fund. They give people free reign and they hire only the smartest people. But he was like very systematically, how do we make e-commerce a thing? And he worked all the numbers. It was like books, the way it works and the warehouses and the shipping, like we can make books work. But you're right. Bezos was another example of he held on.
It kind of goes along with Mark and him working all the time. It's kind of like what you're talking about when you answered that question in an earlier episode about just people always wanting to work and be doing stuff. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're driven guys. I mean, Zuckerberg does all these challenges.
Yeah.
The personal challenges. Like, I'm going to learn a language or master this skill or only, not eat meat for a year. It's like on top of his work, he's constantly giving himself other types of personal challenges. I mean, that's rare. Again, to stay in charge of a company like that, to have the extra energy to do what you do. Though I don't think Facebook is long for this world, but what can you do? I mean, they rode that moment as well as you could. And they did not successfully evolve beyond that. I think Google was better at that. Amazon was better at that. They evolved very aggressively. I think Facebook kind of doubled down on just being a social media platform monopoly and we want to do that well. I don't know how long that'll last.